बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम वसल्लल्लाहु अला नबीयिल करीम रब्बि इश्रह ली सदरी वयस्सिर ली अमरी वहलुल उक़्दतम मिन लिसानी यफ़क़हू क़ौली। The theme for the present talk is the principles of revolution. Historians generally maintain that all the revolutions failed. One Western scholar has rightly said that all the revolutions were coup, C-O-U-P. All the revolutions were coup rather than revolution. It means that those reformers and thinkers and leaders who bring about revolution, who struggle for some revolutions, they were successful in coup and not in revolution. Revolution means, what is the difference between revolution and coup? Coup means sudden change, but revolution means complete change. When there is a change in government, in rulers, without change in society, that is coup. And when there is a complete change in politics, in society, in all walk of life, then it is revolution. So all those leaders were successful in coup, but not in revolution. This is a side aspect of the history of revolution. Now, there is only one exception in this rule, that is Islamic revolution of the early period of 7th century. Almost all the historians have accepted that Islamic revolution was a complete revolution. It's not simply a coup. For example, this is the historical role of Islam, compiled by a Bengali scholar, M.N. Roy. In this book, The Historical Role of Islam, in this book, M.N. Roy clearly maintains that the Islamic revolution was the most miraculous of all miracles. Islamic revolution was the most miraculous of all miracles. It is not only B.N. Roy, but almost all the historians have accepted this fact. For example, Swami Vivekanand, one of the great scholars of India, he has observed that if ever any religion approached to this equality, it is Islam and Islam alone. Mahatma Gandhi has said in one of his articles addressing to Congress leaders that you have to follow Abu Bakr and Umar. They were, Abu Bakr and Umar were Khalifa. First Khalifa was Abu Bakr, second Khalifa was Umar, after the Prophet of Islam. So he refers to Abu Bakr and Umar and says, they were masters of vast empire, but they lived a life of paupers. So is the case of all scholars. American scholar Dr. Michael Hart has published a book, The 100. In this book, he says that Muhammad was supremely successful person in the history on both the secular and religious levels. These are only few quotations from the vast literature. In today's talk, I want to deal with this question: how Muhammad was success, how Muhammad was successful, and why others failed is a question. I have studied a lot in this to understand this. To this point, I can say in a single word that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was all were revolutionary. All those reformers or leaders we are discussing here, they were revolutionary, but there was a difference. Muhammad was a positive revolutionary, and others were negative revolutionary. What is the difference between positive revolutionary and negative revolutionary? The difference is that every leader or reformer was born in a situation where there was exploitation, there were problems, there were hardships. So all these leaders reacted to their situation. So their struggle was a reaction to their situation. Because of this, I say that they were negative revolutionary. But Prophet Muhammad was quite different. He never reacted. He adopted his method without any reaction. So he was a positive revolutionary. He was not a negative revolutionary. This is the secret of the difference behind the two categories of revolutionaries. Now, what happened? Those leaders who were negative revolutionary, they spent their life to remove some obstacles. For example, Rousseau was a revolutionary. He spent his life to remove the kingship. According to him, kingship was the source of all evil, and democracy was source of all good. So he spent all of his life to remove the kingship. But when the kingship was removed, then Rousseau was not there to build a new society. So is the case of Karl Marx. Karl Marx was a revolutionary. At his time, there was economic exploitation, industrial exploitation. So he reacted to that situation. He wanted to bring about change. But when change occurred, then Marx was not there to rebuild the society. It is not a simple thing. It means that all the revolutions fail to find. It means that all the revolutions were when these revolutions came out, so the first generation was not there. You know, first generation is the best generation. The leaders of first generation are full of spirit. They have clear ideas. They have sacrificed for their mission. But they were engaged to remove the obstacles. And you know, when the revolution came, they were old, they died. They died. When the time of revolution came, they died. Rousseau died, Marx died, even Mahatma Gandhi died. So all these leaders spent their life to remove the obstacles. Obstacle of kingship, obstacle of economic exploitation, obstacle of British rule. Their thinking was based on this formula that this is the source of all evils. So if we remove this source of evil, then we will be able to establish all good. But they were not able to establish all good, because when they removed that obstacle, they died. Rousseau died, Marx died, Gandhi died, everyone. So Prophet Muhammad was positive revolutionary. It means that he never wasted his time in removing the obstacles. He ignored the obstacles. He avoided the obstacles. His formula was avoid the obstacles and avail the opportunities. So he availed all of his life, all of his time, to reconstruct the society. To illustrate this point, I will give an example. For example, Prophet Muhammad was Prophet of Tawheed. His mission was based on the belief that God is one. There is no God but one God. This was his mission, to establish Tawheed. Then, when he started his mission in Mecca in 610 AD, at that time Mecca was city of idols. Mecca was city of idols. At that time there was only one place, that was Kaaba. Kaaba was a holy place. So Meccan people have placed 360 idols in Kaaba. So the center of Kaaba was full of idols. So this was a problem. Prophet of Islam wanted to make people worshipper of God. So here was an obstacle, that the holiest place, that is Kaaba, was full of idols. But he never touched those idols. He never tried to destroy all those idols. He simply ignored. And he availed the opportunities available at that time. This was a new formula. All the people, all the leaders of history, even today, they adopted the method. They adopted only one method, that first of all we have to remove the obstacle. First of all, we have to remove the obstacle. For example, Rousseau wanted to remove the kingship. Marx wanted to remove the economic exploiters. Gandhi wanted to remove the British rulers. Nelson Mandela wanted to remove the European occupiers. Even Jinnah wanted to remove the majority rule. Mujibur Rahman wanted to remove the Pakistani rule over Bangladesh. So all these leaders spent their life to remove the obstacles until they died. So it means that the first generation died before a revolution. Only second generation or third generation was able to reconstruct the society. And you know, it is law of nature that only the first generation has spirit and dedication and motivation. Second generation or third generation is degenerated people. So first generation was full of spirit, but they died. And second generation and third generation were deprived of spirit. They have no such a dedication. So they failed to reconstruct the society. You can see the example in India, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, in South Africa, in France, in Russia, everywhere. The Prophet of Islam adopted a very unique formula. That was avoid the obstacles, avoid the problem, and avail the opportunities. So Prophet of Islam, when he was in Mecca, and there were 360 idols in Kaaba, so he completely ignored. He engaged himself in preaching rather than destroying the idols. It means that at the very first day he was able to find the starting point at the very first day. Others found a starting point after a long time, after 25 years, 30 years, 50 years. But the Prophet of Islam adopted a unique method, and under this method, he was able to find the starting point at the very first day. So, when he died in 632, he had completed the revolution. The revolution was completed at that time, because he spent his life to build the society rather than to destroy the obstacles. So the basic point is that only first generation is spirited generation, is dedicated generation. And in every revolution, this first generation was lost, because when came the change, they were died. So all other revolutionaries were negative revolutionary, and Prophet of Islam was positive revolutionary. This was the secret of his success. You can see, if you read the history of revolution, you will find that in every revolution, this mistake was repeated, because their thinking was based on negative reaction. So they became rebel. They became negative thinker. But Prophet Islam was not rebel. You cannot say that he was rebel. He was positive thinker. He was positive thinker for the very first day. Positive thinker, positive revolutionary. While all other leaders were negative thinker, negative revolutionary. So the loss was that revolution failed to find the first generation to build the required society. This was the unique formula applied by the Prophet of Islam. Then I would like to give some more example. You see, when Prophet started his mission and adopted this formula, and he avoided the problem and availed the opportunities. By following this formula, he successfully carried his mission in Mecca. And within 13 years, he was able to extract all the good people, all those persons who were sincere, who were serious, who were seeker of truth. They accepted his his message. They became his followers. So this was a miracle of this kind of formula. This formula was given in the Quran in these words: As-sulhu khair. Peace is the best. Peace is the best. Here I would like to say that all the thinkers, all the leaders were believers of a mistaken notion. They always said that, for example, European thinkers say that freedom is summum bonum. Freedom is summum bonum. Some say that justice is summum bonum. Some say that economic equality is summum bonum. So all these people have adopted some other thing that is according to their thinking summum bonum. But these kinds cannot be summum bonum. Summum bonum means highest good. Quran says that only one thing is summum bonum, that is peace. As-sulhu khair. Peace is a summum bonum. Freedom is not summum bonum. Why? Because when you say that freedom is summum bonum, so then from the first day, you have to adopt a confrontational approach. For example, in India, our leaders said that freedom, slavery or freedom, choose between the two. So our freedom was under the control of Britishers. So when we said that freedom is summum bonum, we have to confront with Britishers. Without removing British rule, there was no freedom. So for achieving the political freedom, we adopted the confrontational method from the very first beginning. But Quran gives us another different formula, that peace is the summum bonum. It means that you have to ignore all those problems, freedom or anything. So it means that in all other issues, you have to accept the status quo. As-sulhu khair means you have to accept the status quo about all the other issues so that you find peace. For example, when Prophet of Islam accepted the status quo in Kaaba, at that time there were 360 idols. So this was the status quo. The presence of 360 idols was the status quo. So when Prophet accepted this status quo, he achieved peace. Very simple formula to achieve peace is that accept the status quo, and there is peace without fighting. This was the formula of Prophet of Islam. He said that peace is the summum bonum, peace is the highest good, and all other things are secondary. So in all other issues, you have to accept the status quo, and then there is peace. You know, when the Prophet of Islam was faced atrocities in Mecca, even they wanted to kill him, then he decided to leave Mecca and settle in Medina. So he avoided confrontation. They wanted to kill Prophet Muhammad, but he avoided confrontation. He left Mecca and settled in Medina. So there was no confrontation. By simple way of migration, he again was able to achieve peace. Then when he settled in Medina, then Meccan people waged war against Prophet Islam. There was Battle of Badr, Battle of Uhud. But after some skirmishes, these were not war, it was skirmishes. He settled a peace. He accepted all those conditions they wanted. He never adopted the confrontational method. He said that he accepted all the conditions laid down by Meccan people. Then there was an agreement, peace treaty that is called Hudaybiyah principle. It was a peace treaty. It was a no war pact. So again, by accepting their conditions, he was able to establish peace. So the formula of Prophet of Islam was that peace is the summum bonum. All other things are secondary. All the issues are secondary. So you have to accept the status quo in all other issues. Then there is peace. If you are ready to accept status quo in other issues, then there is peace. So this was the formula of Prophet of Islam. And because of this, I say that others were negative revolutionary, and Prophet of Islam was positive revolutionary. So by adopting this formula, it became possible to use the first generation to rebuild the society. My point is that in every movement, in every revolutions, there are first generation and then there are second or third generation. The first generation is spirited generation, is dedicated generation. First generation are those who have sacrificed for their mission. So they are sincere people. But when you adopt that formula, that we have to remove, first of all, we have to remove the obstacles, then it is bound to lose the first generation. Because when you adopt this formula, that first of all you have to remove the obstacle, all these people will die, because they are not going to live for 1,000 years. Man is not going to live 1,000 years. Everyone dies after 70 years, 80 years. So when you adopt this formula, that first of all we have to remove the obstacles, you lose the first generation. So in every revolution they lost the first generation. Then only second generation or third generation was left to rebuild the society. And they were not spirited people. They were not dedicated people. Their first concern was their interest. You know the difference between the two. For the first generation, their supreme concern is mission. But for the second generation or third generation or fourth generation, their concern is simply their interest, not mission. For the first generation, mission is their supreme concern. But for the second generation or third generation, their interest is the supreme concern. It is this reason by which you can explain that phenomena, that why all the revolutions were failed, and only when the prophetic revolution was successful. So this is the principle of revolution that was given by the Prophet of Islam. God Almighty wanted to provide guidance, how to bring about a revolution, how to rebuild a society, how to build a better society. So God Almighty wanted to lead mankind. So God gave this formula, Aslul Khair. Make the peace your supreme concern. Adopt the formula of avoiding obstacles and availing the opportunities. So God Almighty gave this formula, and then Prophet of Islam set an example. He himself engaged in this mission, and by his life, by his dedicated life, he set an example. But it is very sad that even Muslims fail to understand this wisdom. No Muslim, I don't know any Muslim who was able to discover this formula. For example, let us take Maulana Room. Maulana is a very popular figure in Islamic history. His book is very famous book, Masnavi Maulana Room. In this book, he says that it is his line in Persian, چوں بنائے کوہنا آبادہ کنن، چوں بنائے کوہنا آبادہ کنن، اولاً تعمیر را ویراں کنن. It means that when we want to build a new when we want to build a new society, when we want to build a new construction, first of all, we have to destroy the older one. It means that first of all, you have to remove the articles, remove the obstacles. First of all, you have to destroy the old building. Then you will be able to construct a new building. In other words, the same formula. That first of all, you have to remove those obstacles. The same was repeated by Iqbal, Allama Iqbal. گفتن جہان ماں آیا بتومی سازت، گفتم کے نمی سازت، گفتن کے برہمدن. If you see, you will find that all the Muslim leaders of our present world have adopted this kind of formula which was rejected by Quran. And the Quran rejected this formula and said that don't waste time in removing the obstacles, but avail the opportunities. But you see, in Palestine, for example, whole Arab world is engaged to remove the obstacle, to kill the Jews, to finish the Israeli state. The whole Arab is engaged in the whole Arab has adopted the same formula which was rejected by the Quran. The Quranic formula was that I accept the status quo in Palestine and avail the opportunities. You know, when in 1948, when Israel was established, there were enormous opportunities because Israel was able to occupy only 1/3 of Palestine. 2/3 of Palestine, 2/3 of Palestinian land was in the hand of Arabs. So there were enormous opportunities. Although there was a problem, Israeli occupation, but this occupation was only in partial occupation. Only a small part of Palestine was occupied by Jew. More than half was in the hand of Arabs. So there were opportunities. Even after establishing Israeli state, there were enormous opportunities in every field. In the educational field, in political field, in agriculture, in horticulture, in industry. In every field, there were enormous opportunities. But the whole Arab world engaged in confrontation. they adopted the same rejected formula, that first of all we have to remove the obstacles. Then we will be able to achieve then we will be able to avail the opportunities. This formula was rejected by the Quran, but they are repeating the same formula. Maulana Rum, Iqbal, Arab leaders and other Muslim leaders are engaged. So although Quran gave us a very successful formula, but it was followed only once during the Prophet of Islam. Only once. After the Prophet of Islam, Muslims forgot this formula. Until this date, they don't know what is the formula given by the Quran. So all Muslim mind are engaged in removing the obstacles. Our present Muslim revolutionaries are negative revolutionaries. They are not positive revolutionaries. What a great tragedy. There are hundreds and hundreds Muslim revolutionaries in our present world, but all are negative revolutionary. I don't know a single Muslim who can be said positive revolutionary. What a great tragedy. They failed to discover what was mentioned in the Quran, what was followed by the Prophet of Islam. So they are quite unaware in terms of theory, in terms of practice, both. So it's very important to understand this point. We are living in blind alley. Muslims Quran has shown the way. Prophet of Islam has shown the way. But Muslims are living in blind alley. They don't know. They fail to follow prophetic method. And they fail to tell this principle to the rest of the world. So I can say that the best formula of revolution is the formula that was demonstrated by the Prophet of Islam. This formula is based on very simple principle that ignore the problem and avail the opportunities. You know, in every time there are problems. In every time there are obstacles. So if you start your mission from removing those obstacles, you will waste your time. Because if there are problems, there are opportunities. At the same time, there are opportunities. In every situation where you see that there are problems, at the same time there are opportunities also. So if you adopt the confrontation method, if you try to confront, if you try to fight the obstacles, then you will waste your time. So the best principle is to avoid the obstacles, to ignore the obstacles, and avail the opportunities. This is the best formula. This formula was given in the Quran, and this formula was adopted by the Prophet of Islam. We can find a complete example in the life of the Prophet of Islam in this regard. So we can tell the whole humanity that here is the successful formula. Here is the successful formula. Here is the principle of revolution. Here you can find how to bring about change in society. But Muslims themselves don't know. They themselves are unaware of this formula. So how they can say, how they can convey this message to other people? So we have to reassess. We have to revise. We have to reassess. We have to rediscover. We have to rediscover the truth. We have to reassess our history. We have to revise our activities so that we may correct our fault, so that we may find what was wrong with us. So first of all, we have to know what was wrong with us, how we missed the train, why it is that in spite all those sacrifices, we are failure. We gain nothing. No positive result. So now the starting point is to reassess the situation. We can give a message to the world that freedom is not summum bonum. Peace is the summum bonum. Freedom is not the summum bonum. Peace is the summum bonum. Because peace gives you opportunities. In USA, there was a writer. He published a book, We Can't Afford Freedom. He discovered that freedom cannot be taken as summum bonum. Because if you take freedom as summum bonum, it becomes anarchy. In every society where freedom has taken as a summum bonum, it becomes anarchy. The society becomes a society of anarchy. Everywhere there is anarchy, fighting. So freedom is not summum bonum. Only restricted freedom is good. Only restricted freedom is good. Absolute freedom is nothing. You can take peace as an absolute good, and there is no harm. If you take peace as an absolute good, then there is no harm. But if you take freedom as an absolute good, then there is harm. Then there is anarchy, there is bloodshed. So you can take freedom only in a restricted way, not in an absolute way. Only peace can be taken as an absolute good. This was mentioned in the Quran. As-sulhu khair. Peace is the summum bonum and not freedom. Freedom as summum bonum means anarchy. Freedom as summum bonum is anarchy. And peace as summum bonum means peace, opportunities. There is no harm. If you take peace as a summum bonum, there is no harm. There is no negative effect. But if you take freedom as summum bonum, there are different kind of harm. There is fighting. There is misuse of freedom. There is bloodshed. There is anarchy. So freedom cannot be taken as summum bonum. Only peace is the summum bonum. It is very important. It was a very important reform in the history of thought. It was a very important reform in the history of thought that freedom is not summum bonum, but peace is the summum bonum. But Muslims themselves fail to understand this point, and they fail to adopt this principle in their life. Quran declared that freedom is not summum bonum. Only peace is the summum bonum. Because if you take freedom as summum bonum, you are taking anarchy as summum bonum. But when you take peace as a summum bonum, there is no harm, there is no negative effect. So this is the message of the Quran, that in every society there are some problems. So ignore the problems and avail the opportunities. This is the way to success. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم أجمعين.